everybody, welcome to the Chips and Tip podcast with Tim Paul and my buddy Tyler Bonde. It's my first podcast since I broke my neck and back. I thought I'd have a podcast with my buddy Tyler to kind of get my foot back into the water.
You can hardly notice, Tim.
Welcome, Tyler.
Thanks, buddy.
Can hardly notice,
dude. You look great.
Yeah. Look like a mess, but so welcome to the podcast, Tyler. I'm laid up on my couch, going stir crazy, and I was just thinking about. I was listening to a bunch of podcasts, and I was thinking about. I really believe that our industry's better when we hear each other's stories, right? I think Dylan over it with Intolerance does an excellent job at that. What we do on this podcast, we're tied to Toolpath. So it's chips and tips, right? We talk about just cool machining stuff. I seem to do a lot of this kind of stuff. Just want to hear people's stories, share some experiences about machining. And as I was kind of getting my toe back in the water, I was like, man, I haven't heard Tyler Bonde's story outside of you and me hanging out. So
yeah.
Let's start it off. So, Tyler, I texted you the other day. I've always said your last name as Bonde, and I was like, man, is that Bond or Bonde? So clear that up.
Yeah. Well, if I'm at the airport going through, I'd let them say Bond. It's way cooler, especially getting on the plane. Everybody thinks ooh. But no, it's Bonde. Perfect. I believe it's kind of a European mutt, being from Minnesota. We all kind of ended up there. So some heavy German heritage, and then a little bit of English, Irish, Norwegian. So kind of
got it. Cool.
That, but,
so where are you located
I thought it was cool,
these days? We were talking. Go. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm living in Charlotte now. I moved here 3 years ago, North Carolina. I've kind of ping-ponged around a little bit through my life and career and different trades, but born and raised in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. Can't get much more Minnesotan than that. And awesome. Moved to Phoenix. I was pretty big when I was young. I always wanted to be like a race car driver or something like that. And I was pretty close with both my grandparents, but my one grandpa was a mechanic. He actually he was in World War II and was a mechanic, went through mechanic school and has some crazy stories of being in Staten Island, sneaking around the wire at night, going into the city, drinking, dancing and stuff like that. And
that's awesome.
It always kind of stuck with me, but he ended up after the war, started his own service station and just built his career and supported his family being an auto mechanic, and kind of was going through high school and was fortunate enough. I graduated in 2004, but we had a really strong trades program. I went to little high school, Matsuura High School. I think I graduated like 300 people. And we were right by kind of 3M in St. Paul. So a lot of the executives lived in the area, and they actually would donate old equipment and stuff like that to our shop classes. So we had a freaking state-of-the-art woods program. We had metallurgy with a kiln and, engine lathe, Bridgeport. And then, they did a really good job back then of teaching trades. And I always loved it, and starting to kind of get to the age of driving, and it's like, well, maybe I'll try to get a job as, an apprentice mechanic. Before that I was like a bus boy and, working whatever odd job I could get to save money for a car and gas money for the boat. But I ended up at a youth apprenticeship program that I went half the day through my junior and senior year in high school. And then the other half I'd go to Saturn, the auto manufacturer.
Yeah.
Kind of started at like the lube bit. Ooh. And then some of the time the mechanics would, when they figured out I wasn't a complete idiot, they'd bring me back and help me do some gravy and teach me stuff, doing brakes, wheel bearings, like Saturns on the old SLs, the valve bodies were junk. So you have to constantly rebuild those valve cover gaskets. And it was great. They taught me a lot, and they got to flag all the hours. So it was kind of a win-win.
Love it.
And then graduated high school, and I wanted to get as far away from Matsuura, Minnesota as I could, because it was a small town. And
Let's push pause real quick. I love. I want to get to all this, but I just realized we should probably start with where you are today and then go back.
oh yeah, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah,
So Tyler Bonde, you're in North Carolina now. You just told me a few minutes ago. You moved every once. Tell me how many times you've moved since 2018.
yeah. So I moved from Minnesota to Connecticut. I moved every single year. Just
Every
kind of,
freaking year. Yeah.
some are bigger moves than
Yeah.
others, but yeah, it's
Yeah, so let's talk real quick about how you and I met, right? And then we'll do kind of an abbreviated story to how we're here today, where you're at today.
perfect.
And then I think what we'll do is we'll go back, pick it up at the graduated high school, wanted to get away.
Yeah, perfect.
Does that work? Okay,
That
so
works.
I'll tell my side of the very brief side of the story. My side of the story. I met you. I don't know if you remember.
I think I do.
There was an open house. There was
Yeah.
an open house for Selway SoCal.
Yeah.
And Katsu Matsuura was there. And I think we briefly met during the open house. And then they had a go-karting event that night. And for whatever reason, probably because we're both racers. Yes.
I think I
That's
vaguely remember
amazing.
that, Tim.
Yeah. I think I got tattooed on my shoulder. Yeah, and then we just had a heck of a time. And then I remember we were out pretty late at night having breakfast and whatnot, and it just felt like kindled souls. So
Yeah.
from there, we've just stayed in touch. So pick it up. So you were an apps guy at Matsuura?
Yeah. I was apps guy at Matsuura, and then there's an opening for the New England sales position, and that was something I never really thought I would want to pursue. But being an apps engineer, and then the kind of opportunities I had to engage with customers, and realizing like a lot of people don't know what they don't know, and I have an opportunity here that I can kind of help maybe machinists at the front end of machine tool purchases and maybe better ways to do things, that if I help guide the sales process a little better, man, we could really make the world go around a little better here. So I started to kind of pursue that and moved to New Haven, Connecticut, Gunwavin, they call it. But it was a pretty great experience. I worked in
sales. So that was your transition into essentially being a salesperson, right?
Yeah, to the dark side of sales. So
I used to look at it the same way until I realized like we're just helping people be more awesome, right?
Yeah, I kind of fought it as best I could. Like I even had my title wasn't regional sales manager. That was my role, but I had it say like product manager Northeast or something like that.
Yeah.
But that was kind of how I worked. I mean, I would go in and my focus was on, hey, we've got machines in the field. Let's make sure everybody's utilizing everything that's there. They fully understand the product. They're getting everything out of it. And if we can uncover some issues and help them through it, we'll build a relationship that way. And then it'll help stem maybe other projects that come up that we can tackle and provide a good solution to. So
it's kind of stacking, help people be more awesome, build relationships, and kind of go from there, right?
Yep.
That's how we're trying to do it at Toolpath too, and that's how we, that's I think why we connected so well when I was at Autodesk. So then from there, did you go straight to Mitsui Seiki?
Yeah, I had a coworker that I'd worked with. So when I was at Matsuura, I helped support the distributor Yamazin solely. And one of the regional managers there I connected with really well, kind of same wavelength, right? Let's help people provide good solutions and not just knock on doors and be a salesman, right? But he had a great opportunity to go to Mitsui Seiki as a regional manager. And at the time, we still kind of stayed connected, and I was trying to poach him for Matsuura, and we were playing golf, and he kind of planted a seed with me that stayed with me. And I won't get into the nitty gritty of it, but things kind of progressed, and I had the opportunity to work for them, and it really checked a lot of boxes for me. It is a really highly technical sales process, and we get to go into places that oftentimes we're the only guys in there because we're the only ones that can actually do it. So it's very fun.
I have some questions.
Sure.
Yeah, it seems like a great fit. What I will say is that we've crossed paths face to face quite a few times over the last 10 or 11 years. You seem happier than I've seen you in a long time. So
Thanks.
that's good to say. We'll get more into the details later about the machines, the brand, all that kind of stuff. But is there a short summary of, I mean, I know what I've always heard about Mitsui Seiki, but what are they kind of known for?
I would say really from getting to know our customers and kind of from their perspective, it's really the reliability, the accuracy, rigidity.
Yeah.
We oftentimes in the machine tool world will compare to like the food pyramid, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The more commodity type products are at the bottom, if you will, in the machine tool food
Yeah.
pyramid. We're right at the tippy top. It's
Yeah.
fewer machines built, much higher accuracy, rigidity, all that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and fewer output from the factory because of the time it takes to build that machine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, that's good because that's aligned with. I've always heard of Mitsui as the brand that people compare to for like rigidity and accuracy were like the two big ones, right?
Yep.
Never heard anything about reliability, good or bad. So that's probably good.
Probably good.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't see a lot of them out there, right? I think they are a pretty Cadillac machine, kind of what some people would call it, but. I want to get more into the details on that a little bit later, but okay. So that's the short side of how we got you to Mitsui. Yeah, I think now let's pick it up back to all right. I'm out of high school.
No.
I was getting my hands dirty.
Yeah.
And I wanted to did you say as far away as possible is what I think you
pretty
said?
much within reason. I think, if I remember right, I think you went down a similar path, but in high school, I knew I wasn't really a 4-year college kid. My shop teacher kept telling me to go to UW Stout in Wisconsin. And I was like, I don't know, bud, that's a little too close, So, we had a rep from UTI, the automotive school that came by, and it just clicked for me. I was like, hey, this is great. Almost 2 years, call it. Great experience. Seems like a good outfit, and they got one in Phoenix, which is perfect, far enough away.
Yeah,
and kind of go explore the world a little bit, if you will, or America, anyways, North America.
Yeah,
and
I forgot that chapter of my life, to be honest. I did sign up for UTI, and the short side is I got an opportunity to go race mountain bikes, and I decided last minute to go do that instead of go to UTI. But I was signed up. I was weeks away. I was like the recruiter and the administrators they were calling me pretty pissed off when I changed my mind. But okay, so you go to UTI. What is it okay to just say what year?
I graduated in 2004, so I moved there the summer of 2004. I think it was August.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember it was like 118 degrees, and I was like, all right, we're in Phoenix.
Yeah. Okay, so you're in UTI. And then how was that experience?
It was good. I transferred. I was working at Saturn in Minnesota, and actually the guy that owned the dealer and a couple of the dealers in Arizona, I went down there before and got a job there ahead of time. So I was kind of working half days there, going to school half days, kind of help pay for my rent and, beer fund, I guess, whatever.
Yeah.
But I found that I was learning more at work getting paid than I was at UTI. And that wasn't to say I wasn't learning anything there, but they were really heavy emphasis on like the baseline. And I remember doing like electronics troubleshooting on these circuit board things. And it was like, man, I'm like, tearing into cars and checking for broken wires, on real cars. Like, I get it. I already have a baseline of electronics. I don't need to pay 20 grand for 11 months of this, So I only went for like 2 months, 2.5 months. I took a month break, and then I'm like, in that month break, my boss at the time was like, "Hey, you're really good with customers. We think you should be a service advisor." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Done. Let's do this."
Well, we could actually draw a line between what you're doing today and that, right? Like learning how to deal with customers. And
that was my first little experience in it, and it was really cool. I mean, I was 18 at the time. I think I turned 19 when I officially became one, and it was cool. It was before really Saturn, it was kind of run as its own entity, and then it kind of started to phase out, and GM took over more and more. But I got to they sent me to California to go to like customer training, and had some really good experiences through that. And then I just quickly realized automotive is just not for me. I mean, working 6 days a week and the $10,000 Saturn Ion that were just not the most reliable cars in the world. And so I kind of got tired of
we
that.
We do have a lot of parallels.
Yeah. I think we both have we both bought Snap-on toolboxes and
yeah. I spent some time at a dealership. For me, it was in my transition from racing mountain bikes while I was going to school to learn machining stuff. And
cool.
The weird parallel for me is I ended up I was working with a dude that I was supposed to travel to UTI with. So nice. It was really interesting. Yeah, it was a crazy parallel for me because within just several months, I was making pretty close to what he was making. And I do remember feeling like, man, there's just no replacement for, just kind of growing up, learning how to work on things and then just getting in and doing the job. Right. Okay. So you're realizing the automotive world's not right for you.
Yeah. And I went back and forth, I think, twice. I bounced around a bunch of different trades in Phoenix. I laid tile. I worked at a rock quarry. I think I was a laborer. That was pretty rough. I mean, it was good money, but I'm shoveling out conveyor belts in the summertime in Arizona. And I was like, I think I did that for like 3 or 4 months. And I was the only laborer for the whole rock quarry as like Rinker Materials. And
man.
It was great. I was in the best shape of my life, minus the silicone cough, but it was a good experience. And then I got a call back to Saturn to go to I think it was the Avondale location, and then kind of worked my way around there. Tried to go to be a mechanic, and then I kind of saw the writing on the wall with GM. They're cutting labor times more and more. The issues with cars, cheap wiring of harnesses from Malaysia. There were constant issues where you'd spend 2-3 hours and you'd flag 0.3 hours. And I was like, this ain't it, Yeah. Tinted windows for 6 months or something like that. And then my buddy was working at an off-road race shop building sand rails and trophy trucks. And he's like, hey, we need a service guy. And I was like, perfect, sign me up, And it was end of August, right before the season. And so I basically it was kind of cool, with my background of as a service advisor and light mechanic, I guess you could say, but check guys in, they'd have $100,000, $150,000 sand rail and they're going to go to the dunes for a week. So they'd bring it to us and then.
All right. Welcome back. We had a technical difficulty. I think we're back at it. So the last thing we were talking about was sand rails. You're working in a sand rail shop.
Yeah.
And did you get in any manufacturing or fabrication stuff then?
Yeah. I ran, we had to make shock spacers, stuff like that. So simple manual lathe. Learned how to TIG weld there, MIG weld, do aluminum welding. But it was a lot of I would have to check guys in. They were going to go to the dunes for a week or whatever. And so they'd bring it to me. I'd go through, sometimes they were basically crazy beefed up bus boxes like Thorntons or Mendiolas or whatever, and pull those out, crate them up, ship them out to get rebuilt, and then rebuild CVs. So I used to see how, we'd always race so you could rebuild a CV the fastest. And
Awesome.
Molly grease everywhere all the time, all over my car, truck, clothes. Fun memories.
Yeah. Let me poke at, you said you learned how to MIG weld and TIG weld. I have a big interest and passion for like, how do people learn how to do these trades, right? So before then in high school or whatever, you had not MIG welded or TIG welded?
I think actually, yeah, Phoebes did bring my shop teacher, Mark Lefebvre, good plug there, Phoebes, we called him. He brought in his own, I think he had a Miller MIG wire feed. So like I made some bird shit welds with that, but it was mainly like
You've been exposed to it.
Yeah.
But then at work, was it like a decision we're going to teach Tyler how to weld? Or were you like, dude, I'm getting in, I'm going to learn this shit?
Yeah, it's me like staying after work, like, guys, I want to learn how to TIG weld, and it came in handy during work too. And then the boss would notice and throw me a couple extra bucks an hour. So wasn't like
That's what I was
yeah, it wasn't like I was triple stitching suspension, swing arms or anything like that. But
cool.
I could TIG weld up repairs and tabs and shit like that. And
Yeah.
it was fun.
I think that staying after work stuff, that's what I was picking at. Some of the best welders and fabricators I knew kind of learned that way, right? It was like, oh, I just decided I was going to learn it. So they let me stay after work. I mean, I learned how to become a good TIG welder that way. I worked at a really nice go-kart shop that fabricated super high-end stuff. Same thing. I just stayed after and was like, I'm going to be good at this. And so I wanted to poke at that to see if we could kind of encourage some people to just stay late and get good at things.
Story of my life, man.
Awesome. So what's next? Where did that take you?
Ask you before we go ahead. So you worked at that fab shop. You got any good stories, the pranks that would go on there?
Oh man,
because fabricators are the best pranksters, in my opinion. What I've learned through the
I don't. Sorry for the language. I don't fuck around when I'm in the middle of working.
Yeah.
And I had a guy that would take we would be welding at a bench, and I shouldn't even tell the story. He would burn his filler down to the nub and he would throw it at me. And he was a huge stoner. Honestly, needed his ass kicked is what he needed. And he would just toss this little filler at me and it would hit my little hot filler. It hit my head or my whatever. And I just lost it one day. I just drug his ass off his stool when I was dragging him through the shop. He's planning on whooping his ass out in the parking lot. Luckily, I was dragging him by his pant leg and about halfway out the shop. I was like, I'm a grown ass man. I don't need to be doing this.
Yeah. I went more like we'd screw around at the automotive, at Saturn here and there. But I remember when I started at that off-road shop, like the fab shop was the worst. They'd like the tube notchers, right? The belt sander notchers.
Yeah.
They'd throw quarter sticks of dynamite in the little
Oh, no.
So 7 a.m, you're notching the tube and you get a nice little wake up alarm there. There's a guy that took like when you're AC TIG welding, like an aluminum hood, you kind of tap it all up and then bring it to the bench and you'd ground out on the table. And I don't know, you'd always send up arcing your torch on the table. I think it was my boss or maybe it was Mike Levitt was the guy. I just heard this was me, but he put a pack of black cats under the ground. So when he arced the thing, it lit the fuse and fell in the guy's lap.
Yeah.
This was like 07, 08. So the economy was starting to get a little rough. And we were racing to the bank to get paid because the last guy there, his paycheck was probably bouncing. So we had this kid that was living with his parents. I called him Ramrod. Nice kid, but he was young and he didn't have rent to pay. So I remember the guys put his truck up on jack stands just enough off the ground. So he went in and like went to race to the bank and didn't go anywhere fast. So
yeah. We had at the bike shop, I grew up kind of in the bicycle shop. So our rookie prank was always to take an inner tube and zip tie it to someone's exhaust pipe. Or hopefully it was a single exhaust. It was way more fun. But we had more than a few guys hop out of their car thinking they just blew something out the bottom. The back would turn into this big.
I've never heard of that. That's a good one. Yeah,
that's a good one. A good one. Tie a knot in an inner tube and zip tie it to someone's exhaust pipe, and at least half the time they'll make a big boom.
Yeah, nice, good, clean fun, right?
Yeah, good stuff. You brought up a bad memory. Probably the most I've lost my cool as an adult.
Yeah, that's entertaining, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Dang.
All
Well,
right. So you're fabricating. You got into some manual machining type stuff,
yep.
and then where did life take you from there?
Yeah. So, kind of like, we're joking around, but the economy was getting pretty rough. I was in Phoenix, and I specifically remember like going home at night, and we were just renting a house, me and a couple buddies, and it was like a Friday night, and we were riding the pit bikes around through the neighborhood, and it was like a brand new development, and maybe 20 of the 400 houses had people living in them. Like it was ghost town. And like you go by some of the houses, and it was like all the workers just dropped all their tools and left. They went home for the day. So there's houses with no driveways. The next one would have no windows, no garage door, whatever. It was eerie. And that was kind of the start of it, right? And then we're building sand rails. Well, I'm in service, so I realized pretty quick that if I could get 2 to 3 cars done a week and do season prep or whatever, that would help make payroll. Well, the
Yeah.
season ends in basically April, and there's no more guys coming in every week getting ready to go to the dunes. So it was unfortunate, but that shop ended up going out of business, and it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world. And the only thing kind of going through my mind was my shop teacher, Phoebe's going, you should go work at Moldcraft. And Moldcraft was this mold die shop, or is this mold die shop that was literally like a mile from my high school. And I was like, yeah, no way, Phoebes. I'm going to Phoenix, And so I was like, you know what? I need to go learn a good trade that's going to get through this recession. And I, I'd worked in the desert and outdoors and all the environments, and it was great and all, but there's something to be said to work in a climate controlled environment. So I thought, well, mold die shop, they got to keep it at 70, 72 degrees. So that's great.
Yeah.
And so I just sent an email and said, hey, my shop teacher said I should come work for you. I'm down here. I'm moving back, whatever. They're like, yeah, stop by when you get into town. We'll meet with you. And so did that, interviewed, got a job, and I started out grinding graphite electrodes for like 2 weeks. And it was pretty painful, but they were just testing me. You'd have me, the guy Wayne Welsh, who was a very early mentor for me. He'd say, all right, you got all these electrodes done, and I always get them done, right? And it'd all be dead nuts within a tenth of each other, is where they wanted them. And I could read calipers and all that stuff from past life and from the off-road shop, from Saturn, doing brakes, whatever else. And so he's like, all right, take this electrode and grind 4 steps in it and get it all within these certain heights. And it was like, I can't remember what it was, but basically 1/4 inch, 3/8, whatever, but off to the 4th place. It's like, all right. And 5 minutes later, bring him the thing. He's like, checks it. Okay, cool. Walks me over. Here's a Herco Hawk, and it was basically a glorified Bridgeport with conversational control on it. You got to go square up blocks now. I was like, all right, sweet. So Herco Bob, it was running those, kind of taught me a couple of things, how to run the Herco Hawk. And it was, these things were like late 80s, early 90s. They had the conversational control, but it was like a manual Z quill, kind of like a Bridgeport.
Oh, okay.
And it did have a Z as well. So you could like set tools, but there's no tool changer. You had to kind of keep track of them.
Wow.
So obviously day 2, I come in the morning, no coffee, just, all right, go to work. And I just pile drove an indexable tool into my part, just ramrodded it. Like it was bad. And this thing's open bed. You had like plexiglass coolant shields, it were all great janky and stuff, but pile drove the crap out of it. And like, I was all right. Nobody got hurt. I screwed up the indexable. I think I still have it in my toolbox wherever at my buddy Stan's shop. But anyways, it ran fine for like another month and a half. And then my Z started drifting. And so they called in the local Herco guy that's what I was saying. He looks kind of like Otto, the bus driver from The Simpsons, headphones and all. And he's like, dude, I can't fix this thing. It's not even worth fixing. Like, I think he had to put a new Z-axis ball screw in and a bunch of other shit. It was a hard hit. And so they put me on the Bostomatics, and I started doing, get a program from a programmer now and learn how to set up all the tools in the tool changer and figure out the black magic box of the Bostomatic control. It was, I think, Siemens-ish, but early. These were like great. I don't know if you know Bostomatics.
I've only heard of them. Don't know
Okay.
anything about them.
Yeah, kind of early days. George Fisher owned them, and they were like early, like really popular with mold die. They had glass scales and
Got it. Okay.
early 90s CNC machines here.
Yeah.
But it was great. I learned on that. And then I was going to night school at the same time, Dunwoody. And after like the first quarter, I think I did 2, because we did like a drill guide the first time on, the manual lathe, Bridgeport, all that, hand filed the squares and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I got to make my hammer. That was the one thing I wanted to do, And after that, I remember after the second semester, my boss, Tim Bartz, came out. He's like, Tyler, you're doing really good here. How's school going? And it's like, oh, it's great. It's fun. I made a hammer, but I was like, in all honesty, I'm learning more here again than I am at school. So like, and he's like, interesting you say that, because we're getting kind of busy. So we're looking to do a night shift. They had a bunch of tight deadlines on some molds. In time frame, this is like 08, 09. So it's still rocky waters economy, and we're taking whatever work we could get to keep the lights on. They're like, we think you could do a good job, and we'll make a couple more bucks an hour. And it's like, yeah, whatever. I'll work nights for a while. And it was a really good opportunity for me, because it gave me a little bit of independence and kind of forced me to kind of figure things out more on my own, not just go ask people right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the best part was we got a little slow, and they were like, hey, if you want to learn how to program, here's a Mastercam book. Go through all the tutorials. So I kind of did it the hard way, I guess, or whatever, the old way. And I think this was X5, X6 Mastercam, maybe even before that. This is 20 something years ago.
Awesome.
And
that's awesome.
And kind of the background driver for me going to Moldcraft, being a machinist, all this is when I was at that off-road shop, we worked next to custom motorcycle shop, Jim Nasty Customs. And I was really good friends with a lot of those guys. And that kind of turned me on to Harleys and custom motorcycles and that. I always loved hot rods, wanted to get into that somehow. But it's like a car, like with your Jeep, right? How much room that takes up, the time it takes, all the parts, It kind of turned the light bulb on me for motorcycles. And it's like, well, they're smaller. You can buy a cheaper one and, it's do a quicker build. So it's like, man, if I could become a machinist, I could make my own parts and build, that was always the most expensive part on a custom bike was your machine parts. So that was kind of my background. Sorry to bounce around a bunch here, but I'm a little motivator. And so fast forward back to Moldcraft, and now here I'm there like 8 months, and they're like, hey, learn how to program. I'm like, I just got paid 8 months to learn this trade from nothing, and now they're giving me the holy grail, if you will, to unlock everything. So
everything. Yeah.
Did that for a while. And then a guy I worked with at Moldcraft left and he ended up at a job shop across town, and they had a 5-axis machine, and he kept just chirping in my ear, you got to come here. You got to learn this 5-axis. And I was like, no, man, I'm happy. I'm Moldcraft. It's fine. Whatever. Another like 6 months or whatever went by. And I was going nights to days every other week. And I'm like, guys, I can't, live like
murder.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. But I was a kid, so they're like, hey, whatever, we'll toughen them up, And meanwhile, I got my buddy Dave chirping in my ear, and I was like, all right, whatever, I'll go see. And a couple bucks more an hour, but the main thing for me was the opportunity to learn 5-axis.
Yeah.
So we made the move over there, and that boss. That like at Moldcraft was cool because they're like, hey, if government work is totally cool, you want to make parts as long as you don't screw anything up, buy your own stuff, have at it, And just don't be running production here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I made sure when I made the move over to machining specialties, that like the boss was cool about that. Like, yeah, make whatever you want, man. Yeah, we all ride here. Like, you build custom bikes? Cool. Go for it,
Nice.
So that,
What was the profile at the next shop? So they had 5-axis, but is it like a 5-axis machine? What was kind of their setup?
yeah, it was like your standard, like strip mall machine shop, it wasn't anything great, nothing state of the art. I was the youngest guy by like 20 years. They had all Hercos, and again, with my Herco Hawk experience, right, it kind of played in, but they had the 1.5-axis, a VTX U24 or something like that. Not great, but it is a 5-axis, and it worked, and we made dang good parts on it.
Yeah.
And it was an opportunity, right? That's the way I looked at it. Hey, I have no college, I have no background. I know I can work hard, put my head down, and if I want to learn something, I'm going to find a way to learn it. They're giving me a shot. I'm going to take this as far as I can. And the
I think that's the soundbite for the whole podcast right there. Right there.
I can do it.
Well, yeah, that's the story of my career. I mean, it's the most machinists that I think thrive in this industry. It kind of start with that perspective, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure plenty. I definitely have people that I've mentored and just been around that like their career gets to a certain point and they're like, man, I've already passed what I thought I was going to get to, and then they start handicapping themselves because it's hard work. It's a lot of intimidating kind of hard work, right? So that's awesome.
And there's a lot of like personal sacrifices, I think, that you have to kind of shelf to do that. So
yeah,
I've done that, and it's fine. I wouldn't change anything, but it's the deep inside you, what you got, right? Your own personal motivator, I guess, that gets you up in the morning and keeps you passionate about what you do. I think it's important,
Yeah, so I like to see things in themes, and I would say there's definitely a theme percolating of you kind of taking ownership in your own education and learning. We talked about the welding. We talked about like you saw this. Some people look at it as a challenge. You saw it as an opportunity. So
yeah,
awesome. So how did you get into learning the 5-axis side over there?
I think I can't remember the program because I was a little ignorant to the aero industry at the time, but my boss, I can't remember. I think it was actually the guy, Brent, that was running the 5-axis. His like uncle worked at this shop in Wisconsin, and they had this huge Boeing contract to do all these structural parts, and they were all 5-axis. And the shop was way behind and they needed help. So my boss learned pretty quick, like, and again, thankful to Moldcraft for the experience of like 3D machining. I got really good at that for doing die mold. And with the equipment they had, it wasn't the greatest in the world. I mean, they had a Micron there that was pretty decent. I didn't program that a ton. I did a little bit, but we could do some really crazy, awesome things on these Bostomatics that were like 20 years old. So you kind of get really good to make up in other areas in a sense. And my boss learned that at Machining Specialties, he's like, man, Tyler, you're really good. He started bidding jobs like more complex and 3D machining because I was really the only Mastercam programmer. And then this job came up and he's like, you think you can do it? And I was like, yeah, I think, if you get somebody here to help me throw a couple tool paths on, I'll figure it out. We'll bang through it. And luckily in Minnesota, there's this guy, he's a legend. He passed away, but Roger Peterson was a Mastercam programmer and just salt of the earth guy. We crossed paths later when I went back to Matsuura, or when I moved to Matsuura, but he came in for like 2-3 days, showed me how to do some swarfs, and I was off to the races after that. It's like, yeah, I could 3D what I needed to get a decent enough, 3-axis position, 3D surface it to get a better finish in areas, and the other stuff just swarf it or whatever. And kind of learned the old school way, programming the center of rotation 5-axis. And we got through a couple of the parts, and then that shop went bankrupt that we are doing it for. So it all kind of fell apart, but we delivered, I don't know, probably 40 to 60 parts, three or four different, lefts and rights and all that stuff. So
yeah. Okay. That's awesome. How long were you there roughly?
3.5, 4 years, I think, something like that.
Okay.
And then after about a year and a half, I started moonlighting, and I was doing all gymnasies, billet machine parts. I was doing this guy, Mike Prue, that I always looked up to. He builds awesome kind of onesie, twosie bikes. I'd do stuff for him here and there, and a couple other builders. So I'd be working, 50, 60 hours a week during the day for machining specialties, and another 20 to 30, maybe, sometimes more, sometimes less for Haymaker Industries, if you will.
Yeah.
My shop. And
that was your business, right?
Yeah. Yep. And so, on the weekends or at nights, I'd do bike work for other friends. I machined a set of wheels. I'd done, footboards and billet accessories, bars, or, make a couple bucks, help make the house payment kind of deal. So
that was a fun time. That was kind of that era, right? A little bit before, a little bit after. It was like couldn't have enough billet to bolt onto a hot rod or a chopper, right?
Yeah. I credit Haas to that. I mean, I've always had a high respect for that, getting machines into people's shops and then making it easy for them to run the machine, right? Educating is kind of like the golden age of manufacturing, right? The technology with internet and YouTube and everything else that helped people get to where they needed to be faster and easier,
Yeah. Yeah, right around that time, I had my own business where I did mostly like contract work, contract design and programming. Yeah, I would show up. I mean, there would be people that bought a Haas machine and like didn't know where the power button was.
Yeah.
I had to talk to them about what an end mill was. But yeah, to your point, like Haas made it just really accessible for people and made it where they felt like they could just buy something to figure it out. So that's awesome.
It was.
Yeah. So how did you ever do your Haymaker business full time?
No, I kind of came to that crossroads, and it was funny. The guy that got me to that job shop, it was like maybe I was there a month and a half or something. He ended up leaving and going somewhere else. I'm like, great. Well, I'm here now, right? But he ended up Matsuura split with Methods, and they were starting Matsuura USA. So this is like 2013 timeframe, like spring of 2013. And he called me and was like, hey, man, how things going? And I was like, actually really good. At the time I picked up 2 other builders that I was starting to work with a buddy of mine in Phoenix to help design parts and get them to make their own line. Right. And I was like, this is just starting. So I'm kind of, this is either going to go somewhere or I'm going to, I don't know, figure something else out. And he's like, well, I think you should come work for Matsuura. You should be an applications engineer. And I'm like, Dave, like, I've never seen a Matsuura, never ran one. I've never touched a fan control in my life, man. Like,
perfect.
Like, I don't know. Oh, we'll teach you. We'll teach you. I'm like, yeah, I've heard that before. Like, let me try to do this. Let's see where things go, And a year later, like me and my girlfriend that I was with for a long time, we ended up splitting up. And I think kind of a pivotal moment, I was working like crazy, and I learned pretty quick on Tyler doesn't want a machine shop. I don't want to be a bill collector, handle shipping and handling, programming, running machines, setting up machines, tearing down machines to set up my machines to then reset them up. I mean, I was working around the clock. I was crispy, burnt.
Yeah.
And I went to, not to be all like sad or whatever, or go dark, but it was a positive. But I had a friend of mine that had a brain tumor and actually passed away. He was 30 years old. And I went to the wake and I saw him in the casket and I was just like, dude, I gotta like, there's stuff I want to do. I gotta go do this, and, we could look at you, Tim, right? Like anything could happen, right?
Anything can happen, man. Yeah.
So anyways, it was a good like kick in the ass to go, it was like a month later, Dave calls me again. Hey buddy, how's things going? And I was like, dude, I need a change. Let's do this. Like, I'm not going to get this other opportunity. Like, fuck it. I'll figure it out. Right. So interviewed, got the job. And I remember I started like 2 weeks before their 1 year open house. Barely get the software loaded on my computer and IT figured out. And it's like, oh yeah, you got a demo. You got to figure this out. And I'm like, what the fuck did I just sign up for? Right. And just figured it out.
That's awesome. Do you remember what your first demo was?
Yeah, I made this like mold die piece with the Matsuura logo and did like a 3-degree draft on it. Got a decent finish on it. The thing about demos and open houses is like, you've done this, Tim, right?
Oh,
I still keep this for you.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, this is the old belt buckle. Yeah.
Belt buckle, right?
Anybody listening, that's I think I might have this old Matsuura belt buckle. That was one of the first it was the first Matsuura demo I ever did, for sure.
Right. Yep. That's cool. I remember you guys like I can't remember. Somehow we helped with I can't remember. Anyways, yeah, it's a cool demo. I always like that. So I keep it through all my moves.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Makes me feel good.
But
so what were you saying about demo parts?
Yeah. Sorry, tangent. You put all this time and effort to make the perfect demo, right? Because if the wrong person walks by and sees your one little flaw in it, that's it. Game over, right? And
machinist, man.
Yeah, machinist, right? And I get it. We're all a critic, but I remember like being so worried and concerned, and then like the show happens, and it's like people walk up, look for 10 seconds, all right, next, and move along. And you got to have a nice shiny piece out so people can see it. But it was a good learning experience. And then again, kind of tying back to my other history of like, hey, you got to interact with customers and get them engaged and help kind of show them what you're doing and why.
So fast forward, that's how we met, right? So you're an apps guy at Matsuura. I met you down in Selway at their big open house kickoff when they started that down there. I met all the Matsuura people, and for whatever reason, I think you and I have a lot of parallels in life too, but we just kind of hit it off and connected. And I think of you as being, there's kind of this younger group of, I don't think we're getting that. We're not that younger anymore. And the young, I'm a good chunk older than you, but at the time I felt like I was, part of the younger group. You were part of that younger group of machinists that were, embracing things like the Instagram machinist community and stuff like that. So, how long were you, your total time at Matsuura?
9 years, almost damn near to the day.
Oh, okay. I was at Autodesk for almost 10 years to the day. Like very, it's a little over 10 years, but, and so tell me about the Matsuura experience. So past you did your first demo. I imagine that was pretty career shaping for you, right?
Yeah, it was a big thing of like, I remember being in this moment, but being like, man, it's no different than anything else. Just figure it out. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
And I've luckily had enough people to help me along the way. Like Leo, who was still at Matsuura, Leo earlier, me and him became really good friends just through the years. And he's always been real good. And maybe you should try this. And all right, whatever. And kind of being there, making sure I wouldn't wad anything up too bad, right?
Awesome.
But it was good. I was an AE for 3 years total. I think it was 3 or 4 years, 3.5 years, call it. Okay. Started out pretty green. So they had a guy, Mitch, with me, who was from Japan. That was great. He was an older Japanese gentleman. His English was a lot better than he thought, but he definitely taught me what it meant to be a Matsuura applications engineer, and did a really good job. Me and him bonded really well because I could see things of what we should be doing, and I could communicate with him of like, hey, we started tracking like phone calls of issues and tracking trends and problems. And I
Yeah.
was like, Mitch, we need to educate our distributors better, our dealer AEs. We need to make sure the customer is educated so that we eliminate a lot of this time and problems, because these are the lucky ones. People are calling us. How many of these are out there that they're not calling us and they're going, oh, just buy a different machine or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
so,
That's exactly the way to look at that. That's definitely how we look at it with Toolpath, right? As you're lucky if they're calling to complain about it, because there's lots of people that won't take the time to, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with the split with methods, I mean, they lost a lot of their relationships and had to start new ones. And it's
Yep.
hard for people to do that. So we did a lot of really core work there on training materials and training seminars. The early ones were pretty rough. If you ever get the chance to get James Mayad on here, that would be great.
He's on my list.
Nice.
He and I were just texting a couple nights ago. He's definitely on my list. He's one of my favorite people in the industry. For anybody that doesn't know, James Myatt, he's a cellway application engineer. Kind of specializes in maybe mostly Matsuura, Camplete, but basically they're more high end stuff. Total rock star. He's a good person.
Great guy.
He did, yeah, really good guy.
Yep.
Where were we going with that? Oh, where I wanted to go with that was you were talking about training. So I mean I think it's kind of a gap in our whole industry, to be honest. So what was your role in training, and maybe at the end of your thoughts, extrapolate that out into what you think we need to be doing as an industry.
Yeah. So yeah, training, it's kind of a good segue too. So I started out at Mitch there, and then I graduated from Mitch. We kind of went on a world tour. It was cool. We got to go into Tesla, the R&D facility, and that was a kind of a moment for me. Like, man, never thought I'd be here in my life, and seeing the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time, and
oh wow, yeah,
that, and but yeah, I went from kind of being, Mitch's shadow to, all right, next step is you got to go out, somebody buys a machine and maybe the local support isn't comfortable or confident training on a 5-axis. So the Matsuura AEs would go out and help support. So it was, 2-3 days operator training. And that was really great because I got to you get into a machine, you hope it was installed right. It usually was, but sometimes you have the little hiccups and whatnot, but try to sort that stuff out. So it was good being mechanically inclined, trying to do what I could or call the right people and have them walk me through it or whatever. Then train the guys modern 5-axis, right? Tilt-a-whirl plane, tool center point control, Camplete true path, kind of getting that all set up right. Hopefully they had Mastercam so I could do that, or we had other guys that could do other cam softwares. And then so it was kind of two parts, the training of customers, end users, and then coming up with training materials and criteria for the distributors, and try to focus on just from call reports on keeping track of what they needed help with. Hey, maybe we need to train them better on, the kinematic setting or high speed machining modes and different things like that. So it was kind of more higher level training to hopefully trickle down to the end users was the goal of that.
Good.
So
good.
What was this?
Yeah, I mean, my general follow up was more on like an industry level. Like I just would love to see more getter, focused, kind of thoughtful training. I think a lot of good training happens 1-to-1, right? Like just because Tyler knows a lot, so he teaches Bob or whatever. But what's your kind of overall thoughts on how our industry teaches, right? How our industry learns and what we should be doing better and different?
Yeah, I think One thing that we tried to do was, what is it? People learn 3 different ways. You've got, guys that read, they got visual guys, you
Yeah.
see how somebody does it, or tactile, right? You're hands-on kind of learner. So we always tried to train those different ways, or at least leave materials so it could cater to them. So I think being cognizant of that people all don't learn the same way. In the minute you don't tailor what you're trying to teach to them, you're never going to teach them anything. You kind of got to be mindful of that. Um, so I think in the last really 5 years, 6 years, there's been a drastic shift in training. And love him or hate him, I've always had a high respect for Titan for what he does for training.
Yeah.
And trying to get it out to the masses and that level. I think a lot of the CAM softwares have gotten really good at training, doing online tutorials and stepping up what the tutorial is, making them more interesting.
Yeah.
On the machinist level side, I think honestly, I don't know how you fix it, but down to like the elementary school level, you got to get kids engaged early on, right? And I
Yeah.
don't know how you do that safely, but I think 3D printers have done a great job of that. So maybe even getting people in at a young age in drafting, and then, CAM or CAD modeling, and then 3D printing. So they understand maybe manufacturing processes, maybe a little more,
Yeah. Yeah.
would be good. And it sounds like it's going that way, but got to get the
Yeah.
really on.
My last few years at Autodesk, I was on the education team. And so it's like and to be honest, manufacturing has given me more than I ever would have imagined my life would have given me. So I'm super passionate about education and getting more people into at least knowing manufacturing and machining is an option, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned more about, I definitely don't need to go too far off into this, but I learned more about the education system than I wanted to know. Uh, and I think fundamentally, like we got rid of shop classes in junior highs and high schools. And if you go before that, like as an elementary school, like, we're building bridges, popsicle stick bridges to see how much weight we could, how many books we could put on them. And I think I think from elementary school, junior high school, we need to be just exposing. I think when I had my daughter, my goal was to not turn her into a machinist or a mechanic or a dirt bike rider or whatever, was just expose her to as many things as possible so she could feel connected to the thing that triggered with her, right? Like I took 4 years of metal shop high school. I taught I taught myself how to TIG weld and then taught my shop teacher how to TIG weld. Not one damn time did they even mention that, like, this could be a career for you. It was just like, oh, that's where you're going to waste your time while you get ready for college, whatever. So
Yeah.
that long rant is basically, I think, from a systematic perspective at the elementary school level, we need to teach kids how to solve problems. We need to teach kids how to fix things. We need to get shop classes back into junior high, because that junior high school age is when kids make their first, whatever wood thing they made back in wood shop. And it connected with, something like, oh, I can take raw something and make something final and real. I mean, you felt it. I feel it, when I take raw materials and turn it into something awesome. So I'm going to stop lecturing about it, but it is something people are working on. It's just it's turning a battleship, turning an aircraft carrier around takes a long time,
Yeah.
right?
I was listening this week, you and Mark Terryberry talking about it too, but it's tough. It's the cost, right? Like he talked about breaking end mills every day, and it's like, guilty,
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was what killed ours. Was we had this beautiful wood shop and in a great shop class as a whole, but kids getting bored or old barn boards and running them through the sandpaper planer, and there goes a $10,000 planing belt or blades or whatever, and it's like,
Yeah.
who's paying for that?
Yeah. It needs to be funded. I mean, it needs to be funded like it's important to our country, and it's starting to happen. So
Yep.
I still know a lot of people fighting the good fight. So
Yeah.
and then I think from another perspective, from an industry perspective, when I got into the industry, the old timers, they didn't want to teach people stuff because you were a threat to their job. And I think that dynamic has changed. So I would encourage, everybody that's still in the industry, like start teaching what you know, because it's important for the health of the whole industry, right?
Yeah. In the country. Yeah. I agree strongly. I've caught some criticism on it in the past about that, but it's like the better we are, the stronger we are, the better everything is. We all need to level up and be better. And I preach about that in the past with pallet pool 5-axis, how important that was for job shops nowadays. And
Yeah.
it's like, hey man, more builders need to do this because it's good and there's enough work here for everybody.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
So what is Mitsui Seiki doing? What does training look like for them? Training resources and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for
For them.
us, you.
This one, not for
Well,
them,
for
for you.
me, yeah, a lot of OJT on the job training.
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
very fortunate. I've got my COO, Bill Malach, has been with the company like 40 years, and he
Oh,
started in service and worked through everything. He's just a Rolodex of knowledge.
awesome.
But the culture there is great. Yeah, all the service guys, we've got some of the best service guys in the world.
Yeah.
Some of the guys like Yohei and Iso, like Iso's a jig bore guy. So when there's certain jig bores back at the factory being built, we'll send him back to scrape it, assemble it, because he's a
Oh, cool.
master at that.
Wow.
But
That's awesome.
very, very nice, like super cool people. I mean, it was great kind of coming over. It was hard leaving Matsuura in a sense because I was an AE. I could walk up to any machine, get it out of a tool change, or
Yeah.
do, tool change recovery, pallet change recovery. I knew that all those machines and controls through and through pretty dang well. And then coming over, yeah, it's a fan of control, Mitsui Seiki, Japanese built, but they're different. And I can't walk up to a machine anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
a typical sales guy, right? Like, just don't touch the control, Tyler. So
And then what does is training for customers pretty typical probably across many machine tool builders. Do you guys feel like you're doing similar, like one-to-one AE type training or
sometimes for people buying more basic machines, but a lot of the times we're selling a true like solution base where we're doing some engineering on it and we'll actually be on site. Like our AE Bart is a rock star. We've got a really good group of guys, but specifically we have a jig grinder at a customer in Ohio that they wanted to do a semi-automated process. So he worked with the factory. They came up with a process to basically probe a diameter hole, semi-finish, redress the wheel, and finish all hands-free, for a jig grinder, which that's the black art of machining, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah, for
sometimes,
uh
some tailored training, if you will. Long story long.
yeah. Yeah, got it. I got something in my head that you did some like repeatability. Was it at IMTS? You did like a lecture or class or something
Oh
on
man,
repeatability?
precision repeatability. Frankly speaking, I bombed at that presentation, man. I feel so
No
bad
way.
for
Was
anybody
it
that went
was
to that.
last IMTS?
It was this last time, yes. I
Okay.
practiced and practiced and practiced, and I honestly had never been to one of those lectures. I thought there's just like 5 people here. Walk in, the room is packed full of people. I can't get my computer working, and I'm just like sweats rolling down. I'm in my seat.
Oh,
I'm ticked off. It's a Tuesday. I wanted to be in the booth. The booth was packed the day before, and I'm like, "Ugh." So it's supposed to be like 45 minutes or something like that with questions at the end. And I think I was done in like 25 minutes, one question. And I'm like, fuck, so it's a good
okay.
experience for me because I'm never going to let that happen again. But
You gotta do it. Yeah.
yeah,
You gotta have a bomb to take. Yeah. Yeah. So okay, my memory was right. I must have seen in the IMTS, stuff I was reading. I was like, oh, and we were swamped at Toolpath the whole show. So it was like you saved my week with the throat coat
Throat
tea.
coat, yeah,
Uh, I was ordering boxes of that stuff after you gave me some
nice.
shipped to the hotel. So I missed it, but was there some like high level, like takeaways from that?
Yeah.
I,
The
yeah,
main point I was trying to get across is, with everybody getting into automation now, you can automate anything, any type of equipment, machine tool, or almost any process, right? Um,
yeah,
and what I've even learned in the past is like there's some limitations to some machines. That's just how they're built, and it goes back to the food pyramid of machine tools. But you take a high level piece of equipment like a Mitsui, and the applications I've seen just in my 2 years at Mitsui, we're automating landing gear parts that are insane to automate. But you
yeah,
can because you're on a Mitsui. These are big, 2 meter, 5 axis, massive trunnion machines. And they're
yeah.
running 24/7.
That's
So it's really the precision repeatability, I think was the name of it, or something along the lines of that. But being able to be
yeah,
that accurate that you can truly automate it in the entire process, part inspection throughout and auto adjustments, all that kind of stuff. So really investing a little bit more in the equipment, you're going to get better uptime, better parts, better throughput. But sometimes people get hung up on that price tag too much. Sometimes on the sales process, and it's not
yeah.
for everybody, but there's some things that people don't think is possible, and it is. If you invest a little bit more money, you're going to get a good return on it. So
So I found, a big part of my career, I did a lot of like fixture design, turnkeys and fixture design and stuff. And I would say similarly, like, right, you can do quick and dirty fixtures if you're making one part. But the more parts you do, the more you have to invest into like really thinking through and dialing in fixturing, right? And
yeah,
I think machining is similar, right? You can make there's millions of very nice parts made on a Haas machine, but they take more attention. So I think it falls similarly, right? When you start really automating,
or going
you
to
need to
a
be
production level. Yeah, the level of equipment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Not just automating, but like, yeah, making, production parts. You really need to be thinking about life is a hell of a lot easier when the machine just nails it every time.
Yeah, and even the skilled workforce, those trades, the tool maker type machinists, those guys are kind of fading away a little bit. There's still plenty out there, but more the new generation that it's like, we have the tools to do more. So if you get maybe a higher end machine, you don't have to sit and babysit it and chase offsets all day long to make a good part. So
Yeah, cool, cool. Do you have like a most common thing you see with like repeatability? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but um, man, anything kind of jump out to you? Like, what's the most common thing that pops to mind when you think about people struggling with, making the same part coming off a machine over and over?
yeah, a lot
Uh,
of it, when you could really go down off a tangent off this, but like for
yeah,
us, it's really rigidity. So, you peel away the sheet metal of any machine and you see like our HU series of big trunnion 5 axis boxway. I mean, those things are huge and they're beefy, not only for rigidity, but it helps on the accuracy side. They kind of go hand in hand, right? So when you have a nice stable platform like that and you go up to a 3 meter trunnion 5 axis, your three-dimensional geometric accuracies and repeatability are pretty dang impressive.
yeah,
Um, we build a machine that on a 5 axis, really the heart of it is the tilt and rotaries, the repeatability and the positioning accuracy. If you got a little wiggle or slop in it, the further away you get from the center of rotation, it magnifies, right? Like if you're
yeah,
when we're
yeah,
I think there's the anomaly of when we shoot a rocket to the moon, how precise we have to be down here because of
ah,
the trajectory, right? And if you're off a little
yeah,
bit, you're gonna miss it. So
yeah. Makes sense.
But
You mentioned earlier in the very beginning, I asked you for kind of like the quick points of Mitsui Seiki's kind of, what people think of when they think of Mitsui. You mentioned boxways then, and I don't want to glaze over that because I think there's plenty of people that either have no idea what the difference between a boxway machine and a more typical,
yeah,
machine like
linear
a
guideway.
Haas.
Yeah.
Yeah, dig into that a little bit. I might even be victim. I mean, I think I have a pretty solid understanding, but I don't know if I'd be able to articulate it
Yeah.
super well.
So most common machine tools nowadays are linear guideways, right? So think of like, a rail that a train would ride on, right? It's
Yep.
kind of a similar concept, but different, right? And then you've got a truck that rides along that. And then within that truck, they call it, there's bearings inside of it, and either a ball bearing, or usually the higher end machines have a roller bearing. So it's more of a long, you know, rounded end, but basically a round, longer bearing.
To barrel or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, within that truck. Boxway, you've actually got giant, 3, 4 inch wide, basically on the bed of your machine. And then the other piece that's going to mate onto that, that's going to match that. So your contact surface is, you're not riding on a bearing surface. You're literally riding on another full piece of material, if you will. Um,
Yeah.
so it's much more rigid. The downside is the feed rates are a little slower because the amount of mass and contact, you can't go so fast without wearing parts out. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of benefits for strength and accuracy. So a lot of our larger machines are like that. You're really looking for the geometric accuracy and rigidity for heavy metals for aerospace applications, typically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's like direct. I think about it like that pad or whatever you would. What would the term be? The pad that sits on the ways.
I'm drawing a
Whatever.
blank right now.
That's
Space
fine, but
green.
that's like
Yeah.
direct transfer of the vibration of the machine, right? So instead of being on these tiny little points of balls and the rails,
Yep.
it's like you put your hand on something versus you put your finger on something
Fingertips. Exactly.
into the huge casting. Helps absorb that vibration. So
Yep.
I mean, I can say I don't know if I've run a mill that had boxway machine. There was a boxway machine, but there's a huge difference in the lathes that I've run.
Right.
From boxway lathes versus non, especially when you're cutting heavier materials. And okay, so you glazed over boxways like it was just common. Everybody knows what it is,
Yeah.
and I wanted to dial into that a little bit more.
Yep.
Um, how is business for Matsui? Is that something you can at least high level talk about?
Yeah, Mitsui Seiki, it's great. I think everybody had a little bit of a rough patch into last year with the election and post IMTS. So,
Yeah.
we felt it a little bit, but a lot of our business, it's unique. It's so much different than the machine tool builder, or the commodity type business. So we do a lot with Aero engine. I've got a lot of F-35, the F-135 engine that goes in that for F-35. We got a lot of projects with that.
Awesome.
And then, the space stuff, a couple of my colleagues have some really good space projects right now too, with all that ramping up.
Yeah,
But it's
Yeah.
looking really good. I mean, everybody seems to be ramping up. Defense in aerospace is going crazy, and again, with I think the skilled workforce, it's kind of driving people to maybe look at higher end machine tool options to kind of help fill that a little bit. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah. That's a really good point. I think when people think about automation, right, they think about big pallet pulls or bar feeders, but I just for the very first time thought about like, I don't know, if you have a machine that's just way more accurate and repeatable, and you're kind of automating that, like sneaking up on
yeah,
dimensions, right?
yep,
That's a really interesting perspective because that's like a a pretty high skilled thing is to deal with machines flexing and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting perspective. That's
Yep.
what's the most important part of your business as Mitsui Seiki salesman?
Elaborate a little bit on that. What's the most important part of my business as far
Yeah,
as?
this isn't a test, but like I know what Bill Selway would say the most important part of his business was. Or do you kind of feel like you've kind of got like something figured out?
Yeah. For me, I think I've always tried to kind of do this, I guess, for me, but business wise, just make sure the customer is taken care of. I think our core philosophy is that. So you're investing in a high end, expensive piece of equipment. You want to make sure that your builder's standing behind you and doing what's right. Um, so maintaining constant connections, stopping by, checking in. I've been doing it my whole career, following up on machine installs and making sure everybody understands how to use it, or if there are any problems, even years later, hey, let's get in and make it right. Let's stand behind our product. So you do that, you help build the customer for life, hopefully is the intent. And they trust you and bring you into maybe new challenging projects that they have because you have that kind of relationship, I guess.
Yeah, great.
So,
Totally makes sense. I think I'm getting pretty close to being out of my bullet points to poke the conversation along. Let me look down. So first of all, while I'm checking over my notes, I really appreciate you. This is me. If anybody that didn't know, I broke my neck and back in a pretty nasty head-on accident on a motorcycle. So this is my first kind of getting back into work. Thought I would do it.
maybe you're right.
Yeah, baby. It's all right. So personal insights. Any fun memories? We talked about some of those already.
Oh man, yeah.
Anything
IT.
else? Anything else that pops up?
Yeah, I think, for me, like doing the and you were kind of in that too, the show circuit, if you will, right? Through our younger days. That was a lot of fun, bouncing around the country, and we usually had time back then. We had, the show responsibility, but we weren't really fully in sales, so we could screw off and go do whatever at night and
Yeah.
stay out of trouble for the most part. But I think IMTS is always a fun time for me. We've had our fair share of fun in closing down Kingston mines every night, a couple of times, but going now, we're all getting older and in different roles. It's fun to go and see that. And, I'm on the East Coast now. I rarely go to the West Coast. So it's fun to see everybody in the same place again and doing well for themselves. So,
Yeah, that brings back some some insights, just like reflections I've had at IMTS specifically. I've been going to IMTS for a pretty long time. I've been in. I don't even know I'd have to really put some thought into the first IMTS I went to, but I've been machining for 25 years, so I've been more than a few times, and yeah, it just seemed like you had to be part of the like invited to the big machine tool after hours, ushered kind of party thing. What I love to see is how like it's been a more social community that's built around the machinist. That's been really fun to kind of see that evolution kind of change and evolve over at least the 10 years since I've been at Autodesk. That's been really fun. Memory that popped into my head was in St. Paul. I'll share a couple short ones. Was first time I'd seen a Matsuura MAM
the 100H probably at the time. Yeah.
108. Yep, 100H. I have a picture of me standing inside that thing. I was just like a child, like, can I stand in it? And you guys were like, sure. And you took a picture where I'm just kind of blown away by how big and impressive that machine was. So that picture popped in my head or popped in my memories fairly recently. So that was fun. I have a very kind of special fond place of the Matsuura MAM machine line. I've said for a long time that if I was going to build them, start a machine shop, I'd probably start with one of those and find the business for it. I've just seen some.
From me.
Say what?
Then come
Say
by
what?
Matsui from me later on.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was the first time I'd seen a machine like really run, overnight, right? So that was kind of my fondness there. But you took me out to a local dive bar, and it sounds silly, but it was way too late or early in the morning, probably more accurately. And the beer ran out, and that was the first keg I ever changed. So, like,
Really?
we were down.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We were down in the basement. It was first and only, to be honest.
Yeah, that was hams. You had to have a hams, man.
Yeah, that was it. That was
Man.
it. Yeah. And in Sacramento, California, hams is not easy to find.
Yeah.
But it is right up my palate. So
In the
that
juicy
also,
space, right?
yeah. That also may have been the first time I'd ever stolen. No, I had a friend to just staying up and going straight to the airport. So that was a rough trip home. But I think we've had some fun memories over the years, and I appreciate everything you do for the industry. And
Thanks.
anybody that doesn't know or doesn't follow Tyler Bonde, I recommend find him on LinkedIn. It's Bonde, Tyler Bonde. What's your Instagram?
Is Tippy 128 now?
128. Yeah. And probably also find, if you go to mine's One Ear Tim. If you go to my friends and look for Tyler, I'm sure you'll find him in there.
Yeah.
Any events or anything coming up soon?
So,
Or what's next?
Pardon? What's the what?
Or what would your next kind of what's on the calendar?
Yeah. For us, we're actually redoing our showroom. We're going to build like a tech center, and so I think construction is going to begin on that sometime probably end of July.
Where?
In New Jersey? It's in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. So it's nice and close to New York City for the after party, of course. Right?
Awesome.
But
I've never been to New York City,
dude. I live there, and you never came and visit.
I'm a bad friend. You were talking about seeing the Golden Gate for the first time. I've never seen Statue of Liberty or any of that stuff.
It's a lot smaller than you think it is, so I don't want to like be the guy to ruin it for you. That's it, huh? I mean, it's cool to see, but
yeah, I think Golden Gate and all that feels similar. I've seen it my whole life, so
yeah. No,
do you have a date on that, or like a hopeful target?
I think our goal is like, probably finish it up. It's probably, it's construction, so it's gonna probably drag into 26, and then we'll have an open house for that. And then we're going to try to really start pushing for lunch and learns. We've got a partnership in the works right now with Renishaw. We're going to be putting Vertex 5-axis machine in their tech center in Connecticut, which is going to be great. We're going to do some very high level probing and some stuff I can't mention yet, but keep an eye out for that. And then
I love it. Are you putting that stuff on your LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'll absolutely be active on LinkedIn for that. And then
our industry needs more lunch and learns.
Yeah,
I'll just say that. We were talking about training and knowledge sharing, and I think so many industry people like you or me or anybody that A's that we work with, think about multi-day classes and the bear that but I think there's so many lunch and learns that could be done where you just share a little chunk of knowledge, be part of the community. So I love that you guys are doing that. I cut you off. What else?
Sorry, what's that? You're breaking up a little bit.
I cut you off when you brought up lunch and learns. So I didn't mean to.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I'm a big advocate for that. I mean, I went to them when I was a machinist, and I've seen some done really well. And then, that's my main focus is like not getting too salesy and whatever. It's, hey, we got to educate people and help them out. And, it'll come full circle, so that is the idea. Partner up with some high level people on cutting tools, work holding, CAM software, all that kind of thing. I'm pretty pumped to see Toolpath. I mean, we didn't really talk a lot about that on this one, but I could see all you guys going over there and I was like, all right. And I remember at IMTS, I ran over the first chance I could and got the demo, and I was just like, wow, like, holy cow, man, this is a game changer. This is awesome. And
Yeah, we're on to something special.
talking about the partnerships you guys were making at that time that have now made and been going through. It's it's going to be definitely exciting to watch and see.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I try not to make this podcast about that all the time, but it's I bet my career on it. Al bet his career. I can go down the list of we got the dream team.
Yep.
Like you said, we're partnering with great companies. And if you got a demo at IMTS, like I was out for several weeks with my broken neck. I'm still kind of out, but I spent last Friday and Monday and Tuesday like relearning Toolpath, and like, holy crap, it's a new company. It's a new product, not new company, but it's a new product. So we're definitely still at those early days. Our sales are doing good. We're still in that kind of early adopter stage, though, to be honest, and we're not shy to share that with customers. I just reviewed the roadmap, and we're definitely on the right track. I think right now we're a good additional tool to the toolbox, and I think in coming months and years will be more and more like a real business critical tool. So. Beyond that, I mean, I think we have, we definitely have the dream team. I think we have a great team. I'm super proud of the team that we put together and all that. So, yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
No problem, man. No, we'll have to do something. We'll have to collaborate when the time's right.
For sure. So, yeah. So with that, I need to take a nap. My body's telling me it's time. I appreciate the heck out of you, Tyler. I've always loved spending time with you and chatting with you and catching up. I thought the world kind of needed to hear your story. My kind of main takeaways when I meet people like you, not to clump you in with too many other people, but it's a trend I see over and over and over. You brought up James Mayette. I think he's real similar. It's like, just accept the challenge. And when you want to learn something new and be more awesome, just accept the challenge and figure it out. Stay late. You mentioned kind of having to make some personal sacrifices. I don't know any, good people at any trade that they do that didn't, give up some stuff and stay late and figure it out. Build your network of people. You've taught me things. Hopefully I've taught you a thing or two, or at least helped you through.
Yeah.
So build your network of people and everybody will be awesome together. So,
right. Be a good person. It's pretty easy, right? It goes around.
Yeah. So, all right, buddy. Well, enough of the love fest. I appreciate your time. I hope our editor can edit through our technical difficulties.
We'll have our 15 minutes here all combined, probably.
Yeah. And with that, farewell.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.